apology in advance for Mark Donovan's jacket. Wonderful. In which case, let me quickly open the Hearings and Engagement Committee meeting for the 5th of April. The Fairfield Park partial reclassification. I'll open the meetings. I have apologies from Councillor McPherson, O'Leary, Hamilton. I've got one from Councillor Mark Bunting for lateness. Amy, have I missed anything else?
We do also have apologies from Councillor Naidu Ralph and for lateless from Mayor Southgate.
Okay, well, I'll move the apologies. Councillor Roberts kindly second. All those in favour say aye with the hands. Those against, I'll let you call it, Amy.
Carried unanimously.
Thank you. So, confirmation of the agenda, it is as per the running sheet. I'll move the agenda. Councillor Maxine's happy to second. All those in favour say aye with your hands. Those against, Amy?
Carried unanimously.
Thank you. I don't need to do the declaration of interest, do I, Amy?
We still need to ask if there are any declarations of interest, but we do not need a person to move or second it.
All right, so I'll ask, are there any declarations of interest? No declarations declared. So we're doing well. We're now moved on to item 4, confirmation of the Hearings and Engagement Committee open minutes of the 16th of February. Good morning, Manga Tapura. I've just spotted you on my screen, so I thought I'd say hello. I'll move those. Can somebody second for me? Thanks, Maxine, Councillor Maxine. Any questions? Clarifications? No? I'll put the minutes. All those in favour with your hands, please. Those against, Amy?
Carried unanimously.
Wonderful. So, we're doing well here. On to item 5, Fairfield Park partial reclassification. I'm assuming we have a staff member in the chamber or online, Amy?
Yeah, we do have online.
Wonderful. Is that Dana Blocker?
And Maria Berry is
Wonderful.
also here to support.
Maria Berry, can I leave it in your hands if there's any staff commentary before we hear from our submitters?
Thank you, Councillor Ewan. Hopefully you can hear me. My internet connection appears to be not flash.
I can hear you fine currently.
Okay, lovely, thank you. So the process to reclassify a portion of Fairfield Park to local purpose community was initiated to enable council to consider a new lease for Te Whare o Te Ata within the Fairfield Hall. The Community Committee approved the reclassification, and today the purpose is obviously to hear those who wish to speak. So I'll leave it there.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Welcome everybody. So the first submitter I have is Lillian. Kia Lillian. Welcome. We have 10 minutes for you. Cover your salient points, and I'm sure some of our colleagues will have lots of questions. Can I hand it over to you? You've got the floor.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Can you hear me?
Yes, sure. Welcome.
Morena, Ewan. Ko te mea tatahi kei te mihi ati kia koutou. Ko Lillian Pompey Paki tōku ingoa. He uri tēnei no Ngāti Wairere, Ngāti Haua, me Ngāti Tama Oho. ko ai tētahi o ngā mukapuna o te marae o Hukanui, Tauhei, Mangatangi, Whātāpaka, Raungaiti, Rukumoana, and Kaiatemata. No reira taku mihi kia koutou. Kia mōhio ai tātou, kei te kōrero a hau i roti te reo Māori, engari, ka hoki au ki te kōrero i roto i te reo Pākehā. Koira te take kai te whai, te community. I'll speak in te reo Māori and then I'll translate into te reo Pākehā.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou. Nō reira, morena kia koutou ngā rauranga tira o te kaunihira, anō nei te mihi kia pōla, mehe me kai reira a pōla. Engari kia koe Ewan, ko koe ka te whakahaere, tēnā koe. Me ki ngā kai whakarongo, koutou ngā kai whakarongo, ngā mana ngā reo, me ngā karangataha kai wainganui o tātou i tēnei ata, mauri ora. Ka mihi ki te kai kaue karikia i ngā karikia koutou i te ata, tēnā koe. Me mihi hoki ki ngā mate tāruru nui i runga i a tātou. Rātou kua whiturangi tia, me mihi katika. Ki tō tātou kingi a pōta tuheitia pōta tau te wherowhero te tuawhitu, me te kahui ariki nui tonu, pai māriri. Ko te mea tuatahi, ko te pātai tuatahi mō tēnei me ki te papa tākaro o Marawātea, e whakai ana au mō tēnei pānonitanga, engari mōku ake mō te hono o Enderley kia Fairfield, nā te mea, kai te haere ngā kaupapa i runga i a Enderley Park, engari kāre au kite i te nui o ngā mahi i runga i a te Fario o te ata i runga i a te papa o Marawātea. Nō reira, me he mea e maha ngā tāngata kai tērā hāpori, me pēhea te whakakaukau, te whakakaha, te hāpori kia hara mai ki tērā o ngā papa tākaro me ki ko Fairfield. Nō nei taku wawata, taku hia kia kite ai i ngā ingoa Māori i runga i tērā papa tākaro. Nā te mea ko au tētahi e tupu ake i runga i tērā whenua i Marawātea. Haere au ki te pura i reira, kei reira tonu taku whānau e noho ana. Nō reira, ko tāku ai e whakai ana, engari kia hono pea, kia Enderley, te papanui, me te whare o te ata, kia kite ai, i te nui o ngā whānau, hei tautoko i tērā whenua, i tērā papatākaro. Koina te mea tuatahi. Ko ngā ingoa hoki o tērā whenua i mua, ko Parikirangi, ko te kukitāru he, kia ora ai era ingoa o ngā tūpuna, anō nei taku whakaaro. Te mea tuarua, e kia nei pehea te mahi i runga i tērā papatākaro. Me ki te hāpuri katoa, ka kite i ngā papa tākaro i reira, haere a whānau, anō nei ko te reti, te skate park, era āhuatanga. Engari, me pēhea te whakawhānui atu ki ngā rōpū, pēra i ngā riki, i ngā whana pōro nei, te soka, era momo āhuatanga mo te hakinakina me ki. Me pēhea tērā o ngā whakaaro. Anō nei taku whakaaro, how often do you use Fairfield Park? Ko tāku, o te pātai paipea should read, how often would you use Fairfield Park? Anō nei, kei te tangata te mana, he me kai reira ngā hākinaki, ngā papatākaro, kai reira te whakautu. Tērā te mea tuarua, te mea tuatoru, me he mea ngā panonitanga i rote i te papa me ki te horo, me pēhea hei āwhina i te hāpori. Anō nei, karanga atu ki te hāpuri, e hāua rātou hia, kia kite ai rātou i te painga o tērā whenua, pera ia mātou hāri ki reira no te kapahaka, i reira ngā mira, e pai ai mā mātou, haere i reira mō te noho tahi, hui tahi, era āhuatanga katoa. Anō nei mō ngā kura, me he mea i reira ngā rorohiko, hei āwhine i te taha kura, ka pai hoki tērā. Nō reira, mōku ake, e tautoko ana tēnā kaupapa, engari, whakawhānui atu te titiro, mo te katoa o te hāpuri, hara i tērā wahanga anake. Nō reira tēnā koutou. Ka hoki anō a le ki te timatanga. Tēnā koutou, do you support the reclassification of Fairfield Hall and the Fairfield Park from recreation reserve to local purpose, community facility reserve? I, e whakai ana au. However, I think that with the partnering of Enderley Park community and Te Fario Te Ata, because there are two things that I see that don't happen. You have a huge amount of the community at Enderley Park community, and a lot of them go through Fairfield Park. So why are we not capturing both of them to centralise that, so that they have the best of both of these areas to utilise as a central hub? One thing about Enderley Park is, for me, is that a lot of the generations of whānau still live in that area, and they really service that community well and currently doing well. I'm not quite sure how well the Fairfield Park is servicing the whole community, but when you consider you've got 3 schools, Fairfield Primary, actually 4, Fairfield Intermediate, Fairfield College and Insult Primary in that area, how can we capture that whole community to be able to service both Fairfield Hall and Enderley Park? I just see a little bit of an imbalance in that situation. Plus, I also want to go back to some of the historical names of the area, Kukutaruhe and Pairikirangi. Why are we not using those traditional names in that space as well? The second part was, how often do you use Fairfield Park? I think the question should have been, how often would you use the park? It depends on what draws a person to the park that will determine a true answer. We did and still used it while the hall was there because it had mirrors and it kind of catered to our needs in terms of our kapahaka group. But what other services will they provide in that hall once it's been completed? In the education spaces where I work at the moment, we talk about hybrid learning. Now, hybrid learning is just the different ways of doing learning, and hubs set up in those spaces to help kura or schools in the area as another way of utilising that space. Could be computer hubs where you can get more children engaging in education, because with COVID, that's actually caused quite a lot of issues currently. How do you think the changes in the use of the Fairfield Hall will impact you and the way you use Fairfield Park? It'll have a huge impact, but if a conceptual design has all the elements of community and cultural diversity, then refresh the whole concept for the area and remove the name Fairfield and return it to its real name, either Kukutaruhe or Pairikirangi, named after the area from historical records. And koina moku ake. I grew up in the area. My whānau still live in the area. I also went to Fairfield College. My siblings went to Fairfield Primary and Fairfield Intermediate. Although I don't live in the area with my own whānau, my family still live in the Davies Corner area. And we use Enderley Park for our rugby league club, which is really quite a small piece of ground when you consider we have quite a large membership in the league club. I would like to see Fairfield being utilised in a way that it can actually draw the whole community together, But one thing I think I spoke the other night at a hui that we had at our marae was about the parking and the lack of parking in that specific park. But if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Wonderful. Tēnā, thanks, Lillian. Look, we do have a question. Mangai Tapora, please.
Tēnā koe whā.
Thank you, Chair. E aku whanau ngai, mihi nunui ki a koe, i tēnei ata mō tō kōrero, hei tino tautoko ahau i tō kōrero katoa. Ai, kei te whakaia hau hoki ki ngā ingoa tāwhito, koe nā te mahi o he paumana ora, ne? He pātai tāku, Mr. Chair, just the question that I want to ask kahuri ai i te whanaunga i roto te reo rua i te mea kei te marama a tātou katoa, taku pātai, ne? Mr. Chair, I wonder if the question is to perhaps staff, because I think Lillian raises an excellent point, and I know that this hearing is about Fairfield Park and the reclassification of it, but how do we capture the whole community? And we have we have Enderley, the Enderley Park and the Enderley Community Centre, and then we have Te Fario Te Ata, and what?
So Mangai Tapora will have an opportunity to ask of staff after we've had the public submissions.
Yeah, then I might just reform my question then to Lillian about suggestions on how we bring that whole community together, because I take your point around we have neighbours next to each other, yet it seems with the reclassification we might just be focusing on one area alone.
Cool.
I think that is probably one of the things that probably need to be worked on, but if you can bring both those entities together and maybe they can probably look at a way that is best fits them, because it's easy for us to think about what it could look like, but I think the real gem is with both those, Te Whare o Te Ata and Te Papanui, to see how they can bring that together, because I believe that they can work together in a way where they can bring the community together or the hapori together, and to share both those spaces in a way that can support, whether it's sporting, whether it's education, whether it's just some community learning programs. But if that's the purpose of the hall, they need to be talking to each other, basically. Just need to talk to each other.
Right, thank you, Lillian. I know I've got another question from Councillor Bunting. Mangai Tapora, do you have another question or?
Carl, thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you. Councillor Bunting.
Cool, thank you. And just to let you know, it's very lonely in the chamber with one of us here. Kia ora, Lillian, thank you very much. I have two very, very, very quick questions. You mentioned in your te reo that you were going to translate to English, and I heard the word skate park in your kōrero te reo, but I was wondering what you were saying there, because that's really interesting to me.
Okay, so I speak about what's currently inside that area at the moment that draws whānau or people to the park, and one of them is the skate bowl, as well as you've got a play area there.
Yep.
And those are probably the only two things that kind of draw different types of people, and they don't even normally come from that actual community. They come from outside of the community. So are we talking about drawing more whānau from that actual area to that area, or are we, is it more with our what is it? Our draw card is really the skate bowl, but are we capturing the right people in that space within?
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Kia ora.
koina taku.
Yeah.
What else, Mark?
Okay, I'll try this one. When we were talking with Te Papanui Enderley Trust when they were starting up, they actually mentioned that the entire area from where they were right down to the river was actually Te Papanui.
Yes.
Is in your mind, and I know I'm sort of spitballing it a bit here, but in your mind, is there a possibility of incorporating Te Papa Nui in the new name or in the new identity of Fairfield Hall, Fairfield area? And that
Absolutely.
way, yeah, that could start, yeah, what you're talking about. Okay. That's
I
something
want
maybe we
to,
can talk about later.
absolutely. There's quite a few names, but if I can relate to our history, we've got Parikirangi. We're named after sub-tribes. I mean, Kupi Taruhi is at the back of Fairfield College, and we currently use that at the moment for our Donny Park, and we've got a beautiful stream down there that we look after. But Papa Nui does go right across, and as you can imagine, right down to Claudelands, right through, heading over to the east side. But absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you.
Really
Thank
enjoyed
you.
Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Councillor Bundick. Look, Lillian, thank you very much. We've sort of now need to move on to our next speaker. Thank you always for your constructive feedback and comments. You're always very welcome. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, Mauri ora.
Right. Moving on, Jamie, lovely to see you. Jamie's representing today the Western Community Centre. It's been a while. Nice to see you. You have the floor.
Mihi atu kia koutou katoa. Tēnā koe, Ewan, it's lovely to see you, and Maxine and Sarah, a lot of you. I can't see you all, but kia ora. Hey, thank you for letting me speak on our Fairfield Park Hall complex, potential complex. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jamie Toko, and I am the chair of the Western Community Centre, and I've been involved in that centre for about 20 odd years now. Also just come off the YWCA board for 5 years as and president, and just recently president of that board, and also Tainui Māori Women's Welfare League regional president. So I sort of have a hand in a lot of things that to do with families, tamariki, and of course the rohe, the area of Hamilton City itself. And I've been a Justice of the Peace for about 13 years. So I guess, when you're putting your hand up for something like that and involving yourself in something like that, obviously you're community focused and first and foremost. So, yes, so thanks for the opportunity again to talk on this potential project. Fairfield is a well-established suburb, just like our fire said, and I know the whānau Pompey that live in that area, and Manawatia. But also it was a well-established Housing New Zealand for homes and residents and tenants and families back in the 70s. So in the 70s, Fairfield Park was the place to go to for local rugby league. And I can remember as a child growing up in the 70s that Saturday was just a big deal. The whole park was full of people, and the clubs would come, and us kids would sell raffles and all sorts of things. So it was a really thriving place. And the generation, that young generation of league players then are actually the older generation that are still in the area. So the Holland Roads, the Ross Crescents, the Surrey Crescents, Ascot Road, all of those, this is where these families live, and they're generational families, like their mokopuna, their kids and their kids' kids, so the grandchildren still living there. So if we're looking at who would we bring to that complex, well, I would imagine that a lot of those people would love to be involved in that. But as we all know, rental property tenants are very transient these days. So where we used to have neighbours that we knew each other and could have a cup of tea with each other, and we don't have that luxury anymore. But that doesn't mean that our young transient families can't be provided with services and facilities that a long-standing family would enjoy from time to time. So just because they're there only for 3 months doesn't mean that we you know, we can't approach them and offer them something from a complex like that. Fairfield Park Hall can be great again. And once you get some money and funding into it, there's every chance that you would change that facility, that you could possibly build onto that facility. But it's about having the right structures in place. And I hear you talking about Te Papanui, and they're thriving down there, and that's awesome, because it had a stigma. Te Papanui had a stigma of Eastern Suburbs club rooms, as we all know. And if you're an Eastern Suburbs ex-sports player like I was, every time I went there, I only saw Eastern Suburbs. I didn't see an Enderley Community Centre. But having it been renamed to Te Papanui totally gives it a new sort of concept and outlook. And I think the same can happen to the Fairfield Park Hall. Like I said before, it was a thriving league venue, rugby league venue in the 70s. And it's generational, just like the freezing works. Generational families work at the freezing works. Generational families live in those suburbs. A community house or centre can be really successful if you provide the services that the community needs. Not what we think they need, but what the community feel that they need. That you offer local employment to run the facility, that involve local businesses, and some of the decisions that are going to be made also involve the schools, because it's those kids at the schools that we want to bring there. And once we bring them there, you can teach them how to own the place. So when you own something, you take more care of it. And that's what happens at the Western Community Centre, is that we have all our kids, we have rangatahi, we have senior groups, we have the biggest senior group in a community centre. Now that doesn't happen very often, because some seniors are too scared to come out of their home in case they get robbed while they're sitting at the community centre. That doesn't happen with us. But that's because the kids, the young ones, the rangatahi and the seniors, they all get along. And that's how it should be. And as those three groups I've just mentioned, they certainly take ownership of the Western Community Centre. It doesn't belong to us. We just look after it for them. You know, we make sure that we get funding in to keep the doors open. That's our kaupapa over there. And having the right people running the facility as well. So local businesses support will definitely put their hands up and support a new complex going into that park. So when I talked about the school kids, it is that age, and I think we all know that it's the 5 and 6 year olds of this generation that we need to nurture, we need to bring them on board, we need to bring them into a complex like that, bring their parents into a complex like that, and show them how it works for them. Because you're simply providing the facility, it's up to the community how they run it. Okay? Because I know it works. It works on our side. So we've always, Neil and I have always been involved in any talks or any communication about Enderley Park Community Centre. I never liked that name. And when Neil and I were approached about talking about changing that, we never got a response, and we ended up, there was a hui at the Claudelands Event Centre about the Enderley Park Hall. You really should have had that kōrero at the facility itself. And so all the community get to have a say. But I'm really happy where Te Papanui sit, and we certainly support them. We're putting our hands up at the Western Community Centre to help in any way that we can. We'd love to see an Eastern Community Centre if that was the case. And we would certainly be there, staff, board, all of us, to support the Fairfield Park Hall going into a community house, forming a community house or community centre. And lastly, you just got to have the right people there. Got to have the right people on the board. You got to employ the right people, and that could be some of our whaia that I see on this Zoom hui, you know, because they have the heart to bring the community in. And of course, we're going to be there anyway. From the day you decide, make your decision, is the day that the Western Community Centre will be there to total all. And we all know, sorry?
Go ahead. I was just thinking if you'd want to leave a minute for questions. We're nearly over the 10 minutes at this stage.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right.
About that, whānau. But yeah, hoki mai te whare o te ata. He pātai. Any questions?
Yeah, I'll open it up. We've got time for one question. Councillor Maxine.
Kia ora, Jamie, and welcome to the committee today, and thank you so much for your submission. Part of the proposition to change the classification is to allow the Fario community house to be able to move into that centre. How important from your experience is it that you have access to the kinds of rooms, facilities and grounds to be able to provide those kinds of community services?
I think you're actually doing something there now, Maxine?
Yeah, it's being renovated back from the fire that overtook it some time ago.
So you're not going to put the police station back in there, are you?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so hey, look, anything new is welcome, and yeah, having something nice, and just because you know our hall is 100 years old doesn't mean that our facility, the new build, has to reflect that. So I think it's important that we have something new that, and it smells new, looks new, feels new, for our young ones, for our community whānau to come in there and go, wow, this is us. You know, that's the feeling you want, that I want.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
We've now need to move on. Jamie, it was lovely to see you. Thank you for speaking with us today. Kia ora. Right, so next speaker is Maria Marsh. Sorry, we're running about 10 minutes late. Maria, do we have you online?
We don't currently have Maria, so we might need to move to our next speaker.
No problem. Do we have Carolyn available?
Yes, we do.
Wonderful. Carolyn, kia ora, welcome. Carolyn, we've got you set down for 10 minutes, but if you could just focus on your salient points, and then we could leave some time for questions, if that's possible. Wonderful. Caroline, we're in your hands. Now, Caroline, currently we can't hear you. I can't hear you. Amy, can you hear Caroline?
No.
Right. No, we still can't hear you. Technology is wonderful when it works.
Yes.
Now we can.
There you go.
Welcome, kia ora.
Tēnā tātou.
Morena.
E ngā wai ngā reo, e ngā karangaranga hapu, kei te mihi atu kia koutou, no mātou no Ngāti Wairere. Ko Carolyn Hopper tōku ingoa. I'm one of the 2 representatives that works in the resource management space for our Ngāti Wairere whānau. I know that in my written submission, and I won't need 10 minutes, whānau. I know that in my written submission that I was objecting to the reclassification of Fairfield Park. And just putting it into context, the objection is not about what the intent is of that reclassification. It was around the consultation process, which I didn't believe, and I still don't believe, has been as thorough as it could be. I think that, so for Ngāti Wairere, we've engaged with a number of entities that are either developing, living, working, or playing in the Te Papanui Enderley Fairfield space. And we want to be able to support all of those whānau, but engagement with them for us as mana whenua is really, really important, so that we can support them, and so that our visibility and our profile within that tupuna whenua is more meaningful than just being able to, don't want to be ticking the boxes anymore, actually want to be visible and physically supporting all of those entities that work, play and live in those spaces. And effectively that's it. That was the crux of my submission, was really about, it would be nice to have a complete consultation process as opposed to what's ended up being what we're looking like now.
Okay.
Are there any questions, Whānau?
Thank you for that constructive feedback. I have some questions. Manga Tapora.
Thank you, Chair. Tēnā koe, Carolyn. I note in the paper that came through that there was a hui that was to happen with Ngāti Wairere and the community centres. Did that go ahead? And is there more consultation between the two, or whanaungatanga between the two required?
Yes, that hui did go ahead. It was really good. Well, I mean, Maria attended on behalf of Dan, I think, and one of the other Hamilton City Council staff members attended online. And then we had the Wairere Te Papanui Enderley Community Trust membership were attended at Hukanui Marae. And I think that it was really successful. But, you know, when you start to build a relationship, you build from the bottom up. So it means that the conversations have got to be ongoing and flowing. So it was a great hui. Yes, it did go ahead. With the intention is that we continue to do that with all parties that, you know, choose to engage with us as mana whenua. We don't want to be obstructive. We do want to be supportive, and we do want to be part of those conversations. So yes, Māngai Te Pora, I did go ahead.
Kātai ngā mihi, thank you.
Caroline, I've got another question from Councillor Bunting in the chamber.
You caught it all.
By himself in the chamber.
Hello there.
Okay.
Morning. So how, I just want to make sure we get this right. How next time would you like to, I mean, we've got a little bit of time in your submission. How would you like this to happen? What would proper consultation look like to you so we get this right next time?
Well, I think in the first place, Ngāti Wairere, we need to own some of the, I don't want to say flawed consultation, where sometimes we've engaged and sometimes we haven't.
Right.
But I think that we have to own some of that as well and be a lot more proactive and get involved in what's happening in areas, you know, that we have whakapapa to.
Yeah.
And I think Dan emailed me about the reclassification about 3 weeks ago. And then I have to do homework because I didn't know what reclassification meant.
Right.
And then, you know, and do my own research and background, and then engage with our whānau from Ngāti Wairere, who felt that it was opportunistic to bring some of the groups together.
Right, okay. So it's interesting because there's a couple of other issues we're dealing with in council as well, and a lot of them is about consultation with mana whenua, and there seems to be, the issue is not enough time. So I guess I'm trying to work out what sort of time span would suit you so we can still keep moving forward with it, but give you the courtesy of the proper time. So could you give me some sort of indication as to what kind of time span you're talking about? 3 weeks obviously isn't enough.
Yeah, so, you know, the reality is it depends what it is. Yep. So it's horses for courses, or whatever the analogy is. So, and I know for Ngāti Wairere now, as we start restructuring ourselves into an orderly manner, that for us, we no longer want to be involved in reviewing the drafts of a strategy or a plan or a guideline. We actually now want to be part of the development of that, so that we're not being consulted with, we're actually part of the whole process.
I see.
Not having to tick boxes after the work's done. You know, we're up for a bit of hard work. So a little bit longer than 3 weeks, you think?
Yeah, a little bit earlier in the process. Okay, thank you. You made your point well. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Now, Manga Tapora, is that an old hand or a new hand?
It's an old hand.
No problem. Excellent. Well, thank you. I think that's all the questions we have. Carolyn, thank you very much for coming along. We always appreciate the candid feedback.
Kia ora.
Okay, now moving along, our last submitter, I've got Simon and is it Ofa? Simon or Ofa, are you? Oh, I see.
Ofa.
Ofa, welcome, a very warm welcome. Kia ora.
Yeah.
Now, we've got you down allocated for 10 minutes. If you'd just like to cover the salient points of your presentation and leave some time for questions, please.
Right. Tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Ofa. I am the current chairperson for the Fario Theatre. Simon Leatley is also another trustee. We got our presentations. I will be speaking on some of the services that we currently doing. We do offer kai packages for now, but last year before the lockdown, we did have a after-school kind of program. We did it at 60A Saris Crescents. We are just next door to the park. We do want to move into the hall so we can have a larger space to use for services to the community. Our kaupapa at the Whare is mainly to focus on rangatahi at Fairfield and Chardwell. But we realize now that it is not, to make it more effective, we have to be family focused, to focus on the whānau rather than just the rangatahi by itself. So yeah, we are also looking at trying to establish a kaumatua services. So we really like to have a bigger space to do that. At present, we also help out in planting fruit trees in the park, around the park. We also have a manakai where we helped out certain whānau to build their own vegetable garden at their backyard. So we also we have piloted projects for now with about 8 families. Hopefully we're looking for more to do that in the future. We also would like just to be there at the hall so that the hall is like community owned. In our presence on a daily basis will have the impressions that it is a community owned rather than just a space to be booked and to be used for the time being. And also we have started on the 12th of March, we did have a whānau hui with our whānau at the areas at Clark and also Saris. We have that we're starting to have that on a monthly basis just to update them, get their feedbacks, and they are aware now that we will be moving into the hall once the renovations is fully done. Yes, that's submissions. Thank you, Chairperson.
You are very welcome. Thank you. That was very succinct. I've got some questions from Councillor Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Ofa, for your presentation. Just a couple of questions. You currently occupy the community house in Sari Crescent.
Right.
Is it intended long-term that you would vacate that? and move the whole of the activities and organisation into the Fairfield Park? Hall?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and so that would free that facility is owned by council?
That facilities, we are leasing that from Kaingaora.
From Kaingora, that's right. Thank you. I do remember at a time when I was there. Have you developed a business case and a strategy for how you might use the Fairfield Hall? You know, we've heard talk of health centre and a number of other things which appear to be a little more of an extension to what you're currently doing now. Have you developed a strategy and business case that would help us put together, you know, a case that would increase the need for the reclassification?
We will be looking into that, council, into developing a business strategy. Yeah.
Have you got a timeline for that?
12 months. So it's about within 6 to 12 months.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rob. Now, Councillor Maxine, before I go to your question, we've now been joined by Simon, who's the other part of the tag team. And so I wonder if it would be helpful if I gave Simon a few minutes to cover any of the salient points that he would like to add to Ofa's presentation. And then, Maxine, I could take your question then if that's convenient. Simon, welcome.
Kia ora koutou. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I might have got my timing wrong. I thought it was 10:20.
No, sir, you're absolutely fine. We had someone pull out at the last minute, and we're 5 minutes. We went from 10 minutes behind to being 5 minutes ahead.
Okay, well, I'll keep mine bits brief. Thank you for the opportunity to talk today. And Ofa, I'm sure, has covered most of the points. I'll just Ofa, just pull me up if there's anything I'm repeating. But just want to make a couple of key points about the reclassification. I mean, Te Fario Te Ato, Fairfield Chartwell Community Centre has had, should we say, a little bit of a turbulent recent past in terms of, I guess, managing the service and meeting the needs of the community. So that has been the mahi or the kaupapa of the organisation, the trust, for the last few years, is getting the books and accounts in order, having the sort of support around the trust and governance, the right staffing and so forth. So that's been a bit of a journey. And part of that journey has become looking at opportunities such as the Fairfield Hall. As you well know, as we presented before, the hall was burnt down and in a state of disrepair. The community centre took over the lease about 3 years ago from the City Council, and so we've been trying to maintain the hall and run those community activities that are diverse. I'm sure Ofa has talked about that, from faith communities, older persons dance and sporting activities and so on. So really it's in that bigger picture that we see the hall as being useful to the community and having the community centre positioned there. For example, there have been some issues around security and management of the hall as lessees. We're on one side of the park, the hall's on the other side. We see it as quite important to have our square and centre in that space, and watching it, being part of that and promoting that as a community engagement space rather than being divided from it. Also, we think the community centre benefits from being more strategically placed in a more open front-facing environment. The front of that hall offers on Clarkin Road and so forth, as opposed to being tucked in a whare in the back of Sari Crescent. And so really it's that broader idea. We see the hall with its redevelopment and reclassification progressing the sort of activities that the community centre has tried to promote. For example, the range of groups that run from there, delivering a healthy lifestyle, the free food programs. We've been advocating for the improvement of the kitchen that's there, the aspirations for a community kitchen that's functional and fit for purpose. Currently, that is not the case with the kitchen. And for example, those faith communities and others would have full access. So the community has spoken to us about the need to improve those facilities. We work with tamariki children and adults. So all of those reasons. We also want to say that we fully support the further consultation with the local hapu, Ngāti Wairere, and the council and Te Whare and Te Papanui Endere have been involved in those hui so far. Lastly, I guess we have been sort of with the City Council representatives promoting with the community engagement. We've done surveys, we've had community hui, as Offa will have told you, there's now a ambition to have a strategy, have a regular hui. We've consulted through our AGM, we've worked with the King's Office, Tainui, to get permission to carry the name Te Fario Te Ata, which was gifted by the late Queen, through to the new space. So that's been formally acknowledged, and things like that, and other. And it's come back to the point I think was raised there about a financial plan. I guess the best we can say at this stage is that we do have budgets prepared. We work with PKF accountants and our treasurer, so that we're quite clear on how we manage the rent that comes in from the current activities in the hall, and how we would carry through our leasing obligations and management of those activities within that space. So we do have clear budgets around that. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Councillor, I've got a question from Councillor Maxine to either yourself, Simon, or to Ofa. Councillor Maxine.
Thank you, Chair Ewan. Simon, you've covered off my questions, actually. I'd spoken earlier asked a question earlier of Jamie Toko with regard to the kinds of facilities that the Western Community Centre have and are able to offer to the community, and what difference that kind of level of facility might be able to leverage for the facilities that you provide. So thank you for your very fulsome answer. It's really covered my questions, and thank you, Offa, for your great presentation also.
Thank you, everybody. Simon, Offa, thank you for coming along. That brings us to the end of the hearings phase. We now open things up for general questions and of staff and some feedback. So, colleagues, if you've got a question, pop your hand up, and we can get staff to give you. Now, in fact, I already have one. Manga Tapora, you had raised a question earlier on that we thought may also be helpful, directed at staff. Would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was around, Lillian was talking about the Enderley Centre and what's in the proximity of that community. And so, Maria, I was wondering, as part of those deliberations, can we bring something back that tells us how the hall will interact with the broader community, and the centres, because there's a number of centres around. There's an engagement piece missing just in that community itself, it feels.
Absolutely, yes, we can include that in the report.
Wonderful. Councillor Rob, followed by Councillor Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks. Questions of staff. I know that we are funding the rebuild, if you like, of the fire damaged building. If this reclassification goes through, what other funding do we have in the long-term plan currently in terms of facilitating Te Whare Te Ata occupying the building, and what discussions have you had with them in terms of what their needs would be to repurpose the building in a way that it's a little more than just the existing lease arrangement that they have for community groups? And I ask that question given a number of things. One, we've recently had the Kute Pacifica reclassification of the bowling park in the city. And of course, I heard today, talk about employment opportunities, health centre, and a number of other areas of service that the community house will look at providing through that building in future. Sorry, there's a fair bit in there, Maria.
Hopefully I can cover that off, Councillor Rob, but I do have Karen Kwok and Dan on the call, who I'm sure will let me know if I've missed anything.
Okay.
So the insurance money coupled with a small amount of renewals is what we're using on the front half of the building. What's been done there is a redesign. It was the police were at the front, and then there were some changing rooms. Public toilets were around the back, really poorly configured. So that front half of the building has been reconfigured to lend itself to a space that the community can more readily use. The toilets will open out into the skate space, and there is some funding for some renewal and improvement on that skate space so that those two spaces work nicely together. In terms of the hall proper, which is where the badminton and the more traditional kind of the kapahaka and the Zumba and those things happen, there isn't any funding in the 10-year plan of any significance to make improvements there. I think Simon made the point that Fario have been on a journey. So this first step enables them to operate successfully, potentially at a future LTP. They would have a think about 10, 20 years down the track.
Okay, have we perhaps suggested that they perhaps have a chat with Kute Pacifica to see how their journey went and where they got to? Because, as I recall, Kute Pacifica came to us during the reclassification stage with a strategic plan and a business case, and where they had potential opportunities for funding, subject, of course, to all of the things falling into place. I just wonder whether or not there's a bit of a gap in this case, that there's already some history of another group in the city, a successful history.
Yeah, I think, Councillor Rob, there is a slight scale difference between the two proposals, but I also understand Ellie Wilkinson from this Migrant Centre or HMS Trust is involved on the board of Te Whare Teatro as well, and I know that she's been well versed in the Kute Pacifica journey, along with their own journey in Claudelands Park with the expansion and reclassification there. So there has definitely been some sharing of information.
Okay, thanks, Maria. Thanks, Chair.
Wonderful. I've got Councillor Sarah followed by Councillor Mark Bunting in the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. Some good questions already asked. I also was interested in some of the kōrero from Lillian around the naming of the Fairfield Park and options there. I don't know, is that I guess it's not purely within the scope of what we're looking at here, but is it possible to at least understand what an option could look like in terms of we've discussed having dual names and things for our parks and reserves?
Yeah, it's absolutely possible for a future discussion. Sarah, I understand Te Whare Teatro have already had some conversations about cultural elements being reflected in the building and names for the hall itself, but there's no reason why that couldn't expand.
And if they are keen to pursue that, I guess, conversation further, what would be the right process? Is it something that they'll just work with yourself and your team with, Maria, to start with?
Absolutely not. I think Carolyn Hopper had made some really good points about engagement with Ngāti Wairere in particular, and certainly bringing all parties, including Te Papanui Enderley Trust, to the table would be my suggestion there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, some comments around that then, and the deliberations probably fantastic. Thank you.
So Councillor Bunting, followed by Councillor Maxine, followed by Councillor Martin.
Thank you for going before me, Sarah. That was very much along the lines I was thinking of. Could you please, Maria, in your report, find out for me where the geographic boundary is of Te Papanui, that area that we were talking about, and if you can somehow find out those potential names of cultural significance, I'd be grateful. You don't have to sort of put pages and pages of it, but it'll be really good to know. And see where I'm going with that one. And secondly, could we please find out, or could you include the timeline for the upgrade of the skate park and the playground there, please, so we know the timeline of exactly what's going to happen and where we may need to inject some funds.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Ewan. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Maxine, followed by Martin.
Thank you. Maria, Carolyn and Lillian both talked about the hui with Ngāti Wairere, and I wonder when you're putting the final paper together, it just talks about a date for that meeting, but doesn't give us really any of the elements or key things discussed or questions asked and raised by that hui. So I wonder if you could just add those elements to it also. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Martin.
Yeah, look, I just want to Bunty and Sarah around the journey around dual naming, and obviously, presumably in the report, without leading you to appropriate recommendations, presumably there'll be one of the recommendations will be an action in terms of the future journey of that particular strand of work. Have I got that right? So it's not, what I'm trying to say, it's not just a report, but it probably leads us to an ongoing action of council in that area, Maria?
Yes, Councillor Gallagher, and you know, from what we've heard today, certainly there is a desire from everybody who spoke for an ongoing conversation and collaboration in the space. Yeah,
so obviously that's something that the current or the new council may pick up as part of that journey, but it's a sort of it's a journey that's related to what we're discussing now. And the other thing is obviously just to emphasise what Maria said, Rob, around Ali and her incredible knowledge and her link in terms of the assistance. I'm sure she'll be able to bring on that one. I think the Multicultural Services Trust and their relationship possibly, but more is good. Thank you.
All right, colleagues, thank you. Now, I think we need to focus on page 9 on diligence and the staff recommendation, which is to receive the report, hears and consider verbal submissions. We've done that, and then notes that a deliberation report will be presented to the community committee on the 26th of April. That Councillor Mark will chair that, of course. Do I have somebody? I acknowledge your hand up again, Martin. Just bear with me 1 second. Do I have someone who would like to move that? Is that you moving it?
Councillor Mark would really like to.
If that's all right.
So, yes, I saw him having some sort of conniption yeah, that's very good. You could marshal in an aeroplane. So Councillor Bunting is moving it. Manga Tapora is seconding it, if that's okay.
For a whole range of reasons, very appropriate, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I agree. Yep, thank you. If there's no further questions, Councillor Mark, would you like to speak to the item?
No, thank you. No, I think the speakers have spoken well enough. I have not much more to add. I'll look forward to the report coming in, and thank you for the way you've run the meeting yet again.
No, you're very welcome. All right, any other debate, colleagues? If not, it's been moved by Councillor Mark, seconded by Tapora. All those in favour, please show your little hands.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Well, that looks like the end of the meeting to me. Thank you very much, everyone. I've got a hot date with a 17-month-old who wants to go and the beach again. So
Enjoy,
Yes.
enjoy and
Have
value
fun,
your
mate. Have fun.
make it fun. Enjoy, darling. Enjoy.